Welcome James Turk and Jeremy Carbaugh.
So yeah, as Jacob said, for 8 years, Jeremy and I have been working together at the Sunlight Foundation, which is a nonprofit that the goal is really to open government data and to make the government more transparent and more functional. And that has spread from 8 years ago when we were only working on federal projects to some of the projects that we'll talk about, working on state level transparency, working on transparency in towns, and also on the international level. We'll get in a little bit more detail on what Sunlight actually does in a second here, but Jeremy's going to give a little bit more background first.
Yeah, so when we started in 2007, Sunlight looked like much of the nonprofit world at the time, which was basically a Drupal wasteland. Most organizations didn't put much of a priority on like actual technical capacity. So you would find a lot of nonprofits, especially in DC, especially in the government transparency area, that based all that they did on a CMS. That was often Drupal, and they often contracted other people to build their tools. Sunlight, however, knew how important it was, given the type of work we were doing, to have a strong technical team. So because of that, when James and I started, we moved Sunlight from Drupal to building almost everything on Django. And it's been a core part of everything we've done since almost day one.
Yeah, and we were taking a bit of a gamble. It was 0.96 at the time. So thanks for keeping working on it and keeping that alive.
One of the things that we learned early on, one of the core things about Sunlight is that everything that we've written has been open source. But open sourcing a complete tool to view earmarks isn't really that reusable by that many people. So we started releasing like individual components of things, breaking things out into very small pieces, and publishing components that had nothing to do with transparency. And some people use them, which was good. So we want to go through a couple of them here and show either cool Django stuff about them or how they reflected the government transparency movement at the time. Yeah,
so back in 2008, 2009, crowdsourcing was all the rage, and we were being funded to do a lot of crowdsourcing projects, and some of them were valuable. We were doing things like collecting earmarks, having people annotate, information, and having people request data sets that they wanted to see from the government. And so one of the first things, one of the first projects that came out of this work was something, it was it was a series of hacks really into the admin, monkey patching a lot of things so that you could do kind of pluggable object moderation, so that instead of building a moderation queue for every object in our system, we could just use the admin, and it had some nice sidebars and things like that where you could see which objects were moderated already and things like that, so that we weren't getting all sorts of spam and stuff into the system, and really relying on a lot of what was already there in the admin in 1.0 or so, but taking that and making it something that we could then use on the dozen or so crowdsourcing projects that we wound up launching. And we use it for things like speaker submissions and stuff like that, even more recently than that. Another one was, and Jeremy will get into this a little bit more later, but nonprofit has a lot of content to put out, a lot of policy content, and a lot of writing that winds up on various sites. And we wanted to be writing it in in Markdown a lot of the time, and I think actually I had a conversation with Jacob at some event, I think it was an OSCON or something like that, about wouldn't it be nice to store the pre-rendered markup in the database alongside it, kind of a hacked composite field. And so I wound up writing a Django Markup field, which has also been used by a lot of projects, obviously outside of the government transparency space. And again, really relying on what Django is already offering, but expanding that and having a way so that people could be editing that markup and storing it in the fields alongside
that. Before a lot of the static files improvements that came into Django, we wrote this one package, Django Media Sync. It started off as just like a simple management command that would push your static assets up to S3. But some people seem to like it. So this was the first project that I ever released that actually got community contributions, which felt awesome. But we were able to add lots of great things like pluggable backends, so it would work with Rackspace Cloud Files. You could write your own custom backend for storing your media. It would take care of doing processing like CSS and JS minification. SAS compilation. There's a pluggable system for that. So yeah, a lot of work went into it, and then static files came out and ruined it all because it was not needed anymore. So thanks, Django. And then also one of the more personally useful projects that we've released is Django WordPress, which is an implementation of models that map to a WordPress database, and also default views and routes, so that you could basically point it at an existing WordPress database, and all of the URLs and everything that WordPress provides will still work and show your blog. This has been great for Sunlight because our website and our entire content publishing system is based on this, where our authors get to use WordPress's authoring interface, which is actually quite nice, but we don't have to write PHP, and we don't have to find ways to hack WordPress into a larger Django project. So that's been incredibly helpful.
Do the intro here.
Yeah. So we wanted to go over a couple projects here to show some of the stuff that we've been able to do at Sunlight. One of the reasons we wanted to do this talk was mostly to thank you all, because without Django and the people building the community around it and building the ecosystem around it, we wouldn't have been able to achieve much of what we've done at Sunlight. So thank you, and here's some stuff that you all helped us build.
So I think one of the ones that this community really helped build in a number of ways, not only Django, but also kind of using kind of piggybacking off of an existing Django community, an existing Python community, was a project that's near and dear to my heart, which is the Open States project. This is a project that collects information from all 50 state governments, standardizes it, and puts it into one place where people can do research and find out what's happening in their state house without visiting what's often a very terrible, difficult to use, mid to late 90s designed ASP government website. And this project was actually built by people that were at PyCon, interested in working on projects, and a lot of them, some people are in this room that have contributed in some ways to this project. And we couldn't have done this type of thing without this community, without taking guidance from how Django ran its community, taking guidance from documentation, hosting our docs on Read the Docs, and then hosting the site and the API that gets over 1 billion hits a year now to the API, all through a Django site. And so thank you for that. You all helped build that.
Yeah, just to make it clear, when he says contributions, there are 52 individual scrapers that scrape state websites every day, constantly.
Yeah. And 20 of those were written by people at Sunlight, but 30 plus of those were written by people that were part of this community. So another project that was built entirely in Django is our Influence Explorer project, which kind of aggregates campaign finance information and lobbying information and all sorts of information about influence in federal politics and state politics, so that people can see where money is coming from and going within the government, and all of that done in a pretty nice, relatively easy to use way, so you're not downloading massive EBDIC files from the FEC, which is how the data is actually put out. And you can look at it like this, and again, that's built by all of you thanks to Django. And this one. The third one is the Capital Words project, which is kind of a more fun project, something maybe just to bring up on your laptop or phone at some point, which is a project that lets you see what the most common words are used in Congress every day, and also compare what party uses this word more. So you can search for just any word. You can search for puppies and see who's talking about puppies in Congress, or you can search for more serious things too if you'd like.
One of our first projects that we did was called Public Markup, and it was a way to add annotations to the text of legislation. So this project really got its start when during the bailout, bank bailout after the financial issues we had. And so we were able to get some text of the drafts of some of the legislation before they were actually introduced. And so we got them loaded up on the site, And we actually had policy analysts coming and giving their comments on various portions of the bill. So I think it really had an effect on how some of the final drafting of those bills came through. We worked with IDEO design firm to do an app called Sitegeist. We wanted to make government information approachable and usable by the average normal person. So we aggregated a whole bunch of different government data sources and some private data sources as well. Django provided the API that powered all of this, but it was basically mobile apps that would give infographic style presentations. They were actually web views, so that was all Django presenting those. We had a web interface that people could use to do demos and stuff, so that was one of my favorite projects. A lot of the projects we do also try, as James mentioned, with Gatekeeper, try to get the public to help us do stuff. So there's a series of projects there.
So yeah, one of those projects, and I think one of our favorites, again, all built on Django, including kind of a contribution workflow using things like Gatekeeper, I believe, and has been this project Political Party Time. This is basically when people get those invites that say, come and spend $3,000 on a chicken dinner to support this candidate. Those people can forward, anonymously if they'd like, forward those invites to us so that we can, list them on this site and then, aggregate that information into a place where you can see, who's paying what to be where with who, I guess is kind of the long way of putting that. And, this, again, was a really impactful project. I think something that really got a lot of attention, especially around, political conventions and things like that, and kind of shines a light in an area that, people don't really think about, but that's where influence it really happens is at these dinners where people are eating, their $400,000 hors d'oeuvres or whatever it is. So.
Being an advocacy organization, we try to get people to talk to their members of Congress. So we released a standalone package called Django Callbot 3000, which is basically a tool that lets you create calling campaigns, and so you can have suggested scripts for people to call. It helps people find who their representatives are. We recently added the Start a Hangout thing, so you can just click it and it launches Google Hangout that does a voice call to your representative's office. So we've used this for a number of campaigns around legislation to improve transparency. And we also run something called Sunlight Academy that a lot of journalists use. So we'll do tutorials about how to access data, how to interpret data, all sorts of things like that. And we publish all these here. People can come on, mark the ones that they've completed and get badges and stuff. So yeah. And we've used Django to actually build Sunlight itself. I mentioned Django WordPress for our blog and our site. We built an internal media management tool so that we didn't have to use the one built into WordPress anymore. It's called Horseradish. And then we also built our kitchen cleaning day schedule called Cleanosaurus Rex. It's actually mounted in a tablet in a kitchen in the office that shows whose day it is. You can reward them or send them anonymous nudges if they're not doing their duty. You get emails when your day is coming up and stuff. So this is the critical piece of Sunlight infrastructure here.
Yeah. I mean, transparency can apply to the kitchen too.
Yeah.
Really see who's doing a good job and who's not. Daniel's doing all right.
All good stories have an M. Night Shyamalan style twist to them. So this is the part in the talk where we reveal this one. James and I are both actually dead, which not quite true, but as of 2 weeks ago, neither of us work for Sunlight anymore.
Yeah, so we should probably make that clear. But Sunlight, we really wanted to say, all this work would not have been possible. Everything that Sunlight has done and will continue to do without us is, something that, really everyone here can take some pride in. And, you've made your country, you've made your state, you've made your cities better places, hopefully, because of all that work. And so, thank you for that. And happy birthday, Django.
Yay, happy birthday.